You know, I have the document saved, so it's fine. No, I don't need it. I got it right here, looking at it. Good to go. See, I'd rather not hear my voice ever again. Yeah.
You recognized it though.
Oh, that's what I said. Don, how are you, neighbor?
Hi, neighbor. I'm doing good.
Standing.
Megan, can you notify us when it's precisely 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time?
Yeah, that clock's off. About 2 minutes slow up there.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Coburg Planning Commission meeting for March 20th, 2024. Gonna call the meeting to order. Before we jump into the agenda, I just had a couple of quick things for you. First one is to recognize John Lehman, who is volunteered to be our liaison with the city council. So he's going to be here as an observer and liaison for the city council. I also wanted to remind people that the Oregon Ethics Commission filing is due April 15th, the same day as tax day. And we are on the list to file for that short questionnaire, as I recall. And then lastly, a reminder that people on the Planning Commission are like people on the City Council as far as Oregon laws for transparency dealing with ex parte conversations, that is side conversations not on the Planning Commission or with the planner that you might have with people in the neighborhood or here in town. If you have those kinds of conversations, that's cool. Just make sure you let us know and they are documented, and that way you're protected against any kind of Oregon ethics investigation. Everybody cool with that? All right. So I will go ahead and do a roll call. We'll go around the room. Please give me your name. And then we'll see who's on the Zoom meeting as well. Marissa, would you care to go first?
Did you say Marissa Doyle?
Okay.
Is present.
John Derby's present.
Okay. Ray Baney's present. Jim Bell's present.
Beth Clark present. John Marshall present.
Do we have William Wood on the Zoom?
We do not at this time.
Okay. We have a quorum, is that correct?
We do have a quorum. Thank you, Chair.
Then I will go ahead and consider the roll call done. And the agenda for this evening is short but sweet. We have to approve minutes from December's meeting and February's meeting. You will recall the January meeting coincided with the arrival of the ice storm and was deferred. We have commission business and then updates, future agenda items, and adjournment. So approval of minutes. I did not print out the lengthy minutes. Did anyone review the minutes at home or while we were waiting to start?
I reviewed them. I mean, I didn't see anything that was from December that was wrong.
All right,
As my memory serves me. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for December. 2023.
there a second for that?
A second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand or both.
Aye.
Carries. Any of those opposed? Okay. I did read through the February minutes and they looked okay to me. Is there a motion to approve that?
I so move.
Thank you. A second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Carries. Commission business. We have a also lengthy request for an extension for Willamette Forks site review. Would there be any chance you could give us a summary for that particular question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this approval was for a restaurant and brewery at 91032 South Willamette Street. This was a site review application that was approved concurrently with a conditional use permit in February of 2023 that was approved by the Planning Commission. The official final date for that decision was March 10th, which is after the appeal period ended. Site review approvals are good for a period of 1 year, which means that that approval expired on March 10th of 2024. The Planning Commission did receive a letter from the applicant requesting an extension, which follows the procedures outlined in the development code for seeking an extension for a site review. Because these don't come up too often, I just want to inform the Planning Commission of the criteria that are used in an extension request. So there are, the first is that no changes are made to the original approved site design review plan. The second is that the applicant can show intent to initiate construction on the site within the 6-month extension period. The third is that there have been no changes to the applicable code provisions on which the approval was based. If there have been changes to the applicable code provisions and the expired plan does not comply with those changes, then the extension shall not be granted. In this case, a new site design review shall be required. And the fourth is that the applicant demonstrates that failure to obtain building permits and substantially begin construction within 1 year of site design approval was beyond the applicant's control. The applicant submitted a response to the area in their letter, which is in your packet.
Thoughts, comments, concerns about this issue? Anybody on that commission?
I'm sorry, is this a public hearing? No, okay.
What do we, is this a recommendation to the city council or just we do it?
No, this is a planning commission decision. The language in the code makes it pretty clear that the planning commission shall grant the extension if these 4 criteria are adequately addressed. And so it is before you to consider how those criteria have been addressed.
I have some questions regarding the criteria regarding his reasons for the holdup, his building permits. Has he submitted any documentation or evidence that he's had those issues? He said in his.
No, the letter in front of you is all that has been submitted.
Circumstances beyond his control. That's all he says.
And he also said he would elaborate further if necessary, and so I'm kind of curious, for us to have proper findings, we should have some sort of backup or criteria evidence that he did attempt and to do everything and has been held up.
Agree.
I was hoping he was gonna be here tonight. I wanted to ask him.
So anyway, that was, that'd be one question I had. The other question I had, in his application, he put in, before it was going to be a restaurant and brewery. And in this land use application, he has bakery, general store, restaurant. So I'm just kind of curious, is that a change? And would this be considered a change? I don't know, since it's on his page, so.
I cannot speak to that. I only have from the information from the applicant that was provided to you.
Well, could we get some we'd probably like to get some sort of clarification on that. That's says,
I do believe
Always-
planning commission can request additional information.
In addition to those concerns, I have a concern about what past practice has been for granting these kinds of extensions in general, no matter who they are. We all realize from life experience that conditions can change. But at the same time, as a planning commission, we're a quasi judicial body and we're setting a precedent by giving an extension or not. Is there a way that besides the concern for addressing those four factors in the extension, could we also get a legal consult from LCOG on what's the practice in the county and other cities or this city on extensions and what are the ramifications of those?
Yes.
Because this may not be the only one coming down the pike for us. And we want to be consistent and fair. Oh, and one more dumb question for you, Megan. Is his property National Register Historic Place?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that it is considered a contributing property to the National Historic District, but I'm not certain whether or not it is individually listed.
Has he submitted for building permits?
No.
Oh, you haven't.
No, if building permits would have been pulled, that would have fulfilled the approval period.
Thought he already did.
And my understanding is his original thing expired March 10th this year. Is that correct? After 1 year?
That's
So
correct.
It's already on the back burner, so to speak. then.
The letter was submitted before March 10th to the planning commission. And so in terms of that deadline was met, and that is why it's before you at this meeting.
And we have, what, 120 days to address this? Is that correct?
It's kind of hard to answer because I'm not sure where this written request, as you spoke about the legal procedures, I'm not sure which type of land use action this would fall under, or if it would be subject to the same provisions. But if it were the same as the type 3 site review application, it would be 120 days to make a decision.
I'd like to hear any other comments or concerns from members.
I concur with a lot that John was saying and what's been said so far. I think we need some support and some backup. We're not hanging out there. But also was curious that at some point fence was constructed around the property. I'm wondering, how does that, get put in place without any kind of, is that a different permit or?
Typically, fences don't require a building permit. It depends on the height, but there are height restrictions for which that would not be required. And the criteria approval period in terms of building, pulling a building permit needs to be moving the project forward.
It seems like construction of the fence was some point.
I,
Little,
well, if I remember, I mean, actually, I don't know if I wanna state it, but I think the fence was, he put up before we even saw the application for the building permit.
Yeah.
I think they put the fence up and took down that tree before it came across.
Yeah.
This body.
That's what I recollect too, yeah.
correct, right, thank you.
I was gonna, yeah, I agree, as well. I was really hoping, Mr. Sheehan was here tonight, because I wanted to ask him what the circumstances were that prevented him from moving forward. And I don't want to pry, but if that is one of the things that we have to go off of, I mean, I want more than just saying it was beyond his control. I also agree with what you were saying. I would like to know historically maybe what we've done so we can kind of be congruent with that. And if we, as a city generally pass these with something like this, then I might lean that direction. But if it's historically been pretty stingent and say you had your chance, I would like to try and stay in line with that perhaps.
I'll piggyback on that as well. As my feeling is that the proposed use of the property, from my recollection, without going to the original one, has changed. And so in my thought, it needs a new application done. So precedents or not, the
Yeah.
proposed use has changed. There should be a new application.
I'm glad you brought that up because I missed that. In my mind, it was just Willamette Forks, but I agree with you. It said, I just looked and it said a restaurant and brewery, and now it says
Bakery, general store and restaurant.
bakery, general store and a restaurant.
Yep.
And I don't know if if that was his intent all along or.
He's got a lot of clarifications here, in my view, as far as that. Basically, some sort of documentation or evidence that what he ran into as far as his getting his permit. Or getting the process so he could get started construction, so there's that.
Yeah,
I'm concerned
either
about.
written or appear in person and give us testimony.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a precedence in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're gonna give you a year, or you're approved to do a year from this application to get going on it.
Right.
And if you can't, then great, we'll extend it, but you gotta prove it. If you've spent the year not doing anything with it, that's a property in our town that has not been able to be used and or developed in any way. And now we're another year behind, right? So
Yeah, but even to make the decision, I think as a group, we have to have some sort of backup for ourselves, documentation, if you will, to justify our decision. Therefore, and it goes back to chairman's comment about some sort of legal authority. We have to make our decision based upon something.
I think that's reasonable.
And the other thing that I wanted to ask is, going forward in granting the extension, can we make conditions? Can we make an additional condition?
I don't believe so. That may be part of the legal.
The reason I'm asking is that maybe we could start seeing some reasonable progress or reports back to the city in regarding that he is making progress.
Well, I mean, he did request a 6-month leave, right? So if we as a body were to say, yes, we'll grant you that 6 months, he's got 6 months. And then if nothing happens at that point, then you come back and say, I gave you 18 months.
It's a maximum of a 6-month extension, and after that, there are no farther processes for further extending.
Everybody okay with what we got?
Just looking for some clarity for staff direction. We want to ask, Planning Commission would like to ask for additional information that includes the documentation illustrating criteria D, as well as an explanation on the discrepancy in the use. Was there anything else?
I didn't have any,
Those are my biggest things, yeah.
he met everything else criteria wise, did he not? That was a yes? That, yeah,
Yes.
You got enough? Okay.
don't need a motion or anything, just that's it.
I think that's it. But shall we do a motion just?
Let's entertain a motion that might use words such as further explanation, evidence and testimony by the applicant. And also, possibly a second motion with words that might ask for legal counsel or the planning commission on what kind of precedent are we setting by continually doing these extensions? Does that make sense? They don't have to be together, but one is the 4 criteria and needing more evidence in information. And the other one is the legal aspect of extensions.
Well, I think it's a clarification on because of the discrepancy between his original request and for and his proposed uses to his request for extension and his proposed uses. That has to be clarified also. Well, and I think you have all 3 of those items correct as criteria, so.
But basically, a close reading of the application caused some confusion. All right, I can't make emotions.
I so move. I so move. Oh, yeah, put them all in one, I would think.
Yeah, and I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
It carries. Tell us when you're ready
Lot
for
to
us to
write.
move on. That's a lot of writing. All right, so as a prelude to the next item, we all agreed that looking into land use laws in Oregon, along with our comprehensive plan, which needed to be reviewed anyway, would make sense as a training or educational excursion for the commission. Today, we're going to cover one of the most hotly contested parts of land conservation in the state of Oregon, Goal 3. Megan, take it away.
Thank you. For nearly half a century, Oregon has maintained strong policies to protect our agricultural and forested lands. In response to an unprecedented loss of lands between 1955 and 1965, the state legislature adopted governance in the early 1970s calling for the preservation of agricultural land in order to sustain the agricultural economy and forested land to ensure resources remain available for timber harvest, wildlife habitat, natural resource values, and recreation. The preservation of agricultural land is one of the primary objectives of Oregon's statewide planning program. Oregon has determined that it is in the state's interest to protect the finite land resource that is the foundation of one of its leading industries, agriculture. Agriculture is the second largest sector of Oregon's economy and contributes more than 12.12 billion in taxes, 29 billion in wages, and more than 680,000 jobs. Goal 3 is agricultural lands, also called farmland. What is farmland? Statewide Planning Goal 3 defines agricultural land using soils, types, and other factors. Land with soils capable of agricultural production are considered agricultural land and are protected under Goal 3 and exclusive farm use or EFU zoning. Other lands may also be protected under Goal 3 and EFU zoning if they are suitable for grazing, used by farm and ranch operations, or necessary to permit farm practices to be undertaken on nearby lands. Goal 3 requires that counties identify farmland, designate it as such on their comprehensive plan map, and zone it to EFU. An EFU zone places restrictions on developments that are unrelated to agriculture in order to minimize uses that conflict with farming. Property owners who keep EFU land in agricultural production benefit by receiving lowered property taxes. Goal 3 has perhaps the most involved of all land use rule divisions in the Oregon Administrative Rules. What are some of the threats to farmland? A vibrant local farm economy requires a critical mass of farmland. When too much residential development encroaches on farmland, a downward cycle of conversion can begin, in which farms experience conflicts with neighbors, such as trespass, littering, pets chasing livestock, and complaints about spraying, manure application, hours of operations, and other normal farming practices. When conflicts become disruptive, farmers stop making investments in their operations and may seek to divide and sell their land for development or to use it for other purposes. The division and sale of farmland for non-farm purposes drives up land prices, often putting it out of the reach of existing farms and new farmers wanting to enter the market. As farm operations scale down or leave, farm infrastructure such as feed stores, processing facilities, and irrigation districts may start to disappear, affecting the ability of the remaining farm community to be successful and driving the cycle of conversion. How does the statewide planning program protect farmland? The statewide program requires counties to inventory farmland, show these lands in the county's comprehensive plan, adopt policies to preserve farmland, and to zone farmland EFU consistent with state law. All in Oregon have implemented EFU zoning. The capability of land for farming also plays a critical role where urban development goes. The criteria in state statute and statewide planning goal 14 for expanding an urban growth boundary include consideration of whether the land is high-value farmland. High-value farmland must be avoided to the extent practical. Similarly, a decision to establish or amend an urban reserve must only include high-value farmland when no other option exists. EFU zoning has changed over the years.
Megan, I had promised you that I would look at what kind of court cases have gone on since this was all adopted in the past 50 years. And I had to stop after 800 court cases and thousands of pages of litigation material. One of the things that I did want to stress about what and why I interrupted is EFU does have its own set of categories, high value versus low value. And the only way that gets settled is in court. It's sort of a gray zone. If it's wheat or some high value crop, it seems to be easier to argue high value. If it's grass seed or almost a wetland, it's almost always in the court cases seems to be less valuable. Pasture land for animals seems to be also another area that can be contested in court as to high or low value. So I did not complete my task because it would take me 20 years to filter through the court cases.
I think that's a really helpful example talking about the high value, using the term high value. Those are the kinds of components that are looked at. So does EFU zoning work? Yes, just driving through farmland in Oregon provides persuasive evidence that EFU zoning has been able to protect large areas of land from conversion to other uses, particularly sprawling and costly residential subdivisions. The comparison to other parts of the country is now stark, especially at the edge of urban areas, where in most states, low density residential development continues to leapfrog across the landscape, forcing the premature conversion of farms to other uses. The impact of EFU zoning may also be reflected in recent farm trends that show a healthy agricultural sector. Zoning that limits land partitioning, speculation, and adjacent conflicting uses leaves farmers and ranchers free to pursue farming and confident enough of a long-range future in farming to make continued investments in their operations. I have on this slide here, the LCDC statewide goal is at the top, which is to preserve and maintain agricultural lands, followed by some detail there. Underneath that, you can see the Coburg objective to retain the agricultural use of land in those areas where the SCS's soil suitability classification indicates that it is highest and best use. As you noticed in the packet included in the Coburg Comprehensive Plan under Goal 3, there are a variety of policies that speak to supporting the agricultural land that surrounds our community.
Dumb question time?
No such thing.
Oh, yes, there is. If a town, a hypothetical town, make believe, were completely surrounded on all four sides by EFU, how can they ever grow?
It can be difficult, but there is an urban growth boundary expansion analysis process that considers alternate locations of where the expansion may take place and considers the soil, the use, and looks at where, to the best extent, it makes sense for the city to grow, because the city is also required by the state to meet the land supply needs for the next 20 years.
Caveat to that is what makes sense.
That's what lawyers get rich on.
Crestwell is actually going through that very issue right now. The city is wanting to expand the urban growth boundary, and it's pretty much landlocked between EFUs and wetlands.
Right.
And so it's a weird trying to figure out which direction to move that line. Need a case study with them.
We have pretty good case study here in regards to our urban growth boundary in the Thousand Friends of Oregon. What we ran into there. Basically, they wanting Stallings be incorporated into the city, and there's what comes in, that doesn't make any sense. That was a good one. I listened to, their spiel at the county. Did it at the county courthouse.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments on goal 3?
And I think it also states the fact that if we put it, if the land's within the urban growth boundary, we still can encourage it to be farmed. That's used as agricultural even until it's actually developed. We don't tax them any differently. Is that correct? Even though it's in the urban growth boundary.
I'm not familiar with the tax program, but I believe that that is correct. And the city does encourage undeveloped land for farm use where practical.
I do have one more dumb question. So EFU, I sort of understand. If someone plants 50 acres of hazelnut trees, is that EFU or does it become forest land?
I believe if you're farming them, that it falls into the EFU.
True, so tree farms where they do come in every 10 years and knock the poplars down and send it to the mill in Halsey. That's different than hazelnut.
That's correct. Timber harvest is considered different than the agricultural crop of the hazelnut tree.
Begs the question of Christmas trees.
Exactly. Yeah, I went there too.
And Christmas trees are an agricultural use.
Yeah,
So
all right.
that one I don't have a definitive answer on. So dumb answer, back to you.
Done. Forest land.
Okay, great. Then we're going to move on to goal 4. Goal 4 is forest lands. Oregon's forests are some of the most productive in the world. While commercial timber harvest has declined in the last few decades, it remains a major economic contributor to our state's economy. Forests in Oregon cover more than 30 million acres, about 48% of the state. Goal 4 protects working forest land around the state, preserving it for commercial forestry, while recognizing its value for fish and wildlife habitat, recreation, and protection of air and water quality. The goal requires county to identify forest land designated as such on the comprehensive plan map and zone it consistently with state rules. The goal defines forest land in 2 ways. One is based on productivity, as measured by the U.S. Forest. The other is by making a judgment about whether land is suitable for other non-commercial forest use, such as watershed protection, fish and wildlife habitat, and recreation. Goal 4 places development restrictions on forest lands. These restrictions seek to prevent activities that could conflict with forestry practices. Local zoning regulations prevent forest land from being divided into parcels too small to manage effectively for timber, habitat, recreation, watershed protection, and other purposes. Some forest parcels qualify for a dwelling. So as you can see on the slide is the LCDC goal stated, followed by the Coburg objective to conserve forest lands existing within the city and its area of influence as shown on map 6. That is all I have for you this evening on goals 3 and 4. Thank you.
Can you go back to that map real quick? I can't even tell what I'm looking at there. The little gray area is Coburg, right?
Yep.
Is any of that forest land? No? Okay.
We are surrounded, like a hypothetical city, we are surrounded on all four sides by EFU, basically. The only exception being aggregate gravel, closer to the river, which is a whole separate issue.
Yeah.
Good news is EFU surrounding a little town prevents the bigger city nearby from taking over, correct?
Right. Excellent
Right.
buffer.
Thank you, Megan, for, I have a question. Yeah, go for it.
Can you define for me what the area of influence is? I mean, as far as, I mean, we're talking 7, 8, 9 miles under Coburg to limits of our, what defines them?
That's a great question. I would have to do a little more research to see how this area of influence was established. But this is the map that is provided in the comprehensive plan. And so I'm not sure, like I said, how that parameter was chosen. Other than it looks like I can see, I tried to follow the southern line down and it looks like, oh no, I don't know. I'm really not sure.
I think you hit on another area that could lead to court cases down the road. I looked at Lane County's plan a couple of months ago and everything surrounding us is already EFU. And they've got it all under their jurisdiction. I guess influence means we could petition or ask the county for a change in designation, but that's about it. Their decision.
Also, that map means the boundary of Coburg is changed. That map.
Might be a little good thing to do list. For the comprehensive plan is to, maybe look into this map, get it very clarified and updated.
Megan, does Lane County Planning have any kind of like routine meeting or discussions with Coburg about planning that we're concerned about?
Not on a regular or consistent basis, but we do certainly notify each other for agency referral when there is something happening that would impact the other jurisdiction.
Not a coffee every 6 months and talk about what's going on type of thing.
Not currently, but that's a great suggestion.
Copy?
Should we move on to city administration report, our agenda?
Yes, that report is provided for your information. If there are any questions, I can try my best to answer them, or I can get an answer for you. That is provided to City Council at their March meeting.
That transportation committee still meeting?
The Transportation Safety Ad Hoc Committee is still meeting. Next week, Thursday, the 28th, will be their third meeting to discuss speed limits. Perhaps our representative would like to give a description of what they've been working on.
Okay,
Basically, we had a lot of discussion about, the intersection of Willamette and, Van Dyne. I'm trying to come up with possible ideas, solutions, if you will, to improve that intersection. And I believe it's back in, we're not sure where we left that exactly what we're gonna do, but it was back in the city manager's hands as far as what we were looking for, what we want, as far as improving the safety at that intersection, what can be done, and what were the ideas to improve it. Better demarcation, stop signs, four-way stops, blocking off one of the roads, those kinds of things. Really, it's now, coming together, coming up with what we think will be plausible solutions that the county would accept. Because the county's the one that we have to convince to do something. County road. And the same will happen with speed limits, at least on the Pearl, Willamette, and Van Dyne. Gonna have to be a lot of discussion with the county and those as well, and then we'll get into the crosswalks, I believe, on Pearl. Pearl will be one that would talk crosswalks. I don't know if there are any more on Willamette. Remember anybody?
I think the committee will be looking at some locations on Willamette as well, at least perhaps prioritizing.
There's this, restaurant, assuming it goes in, that has a requirement to put in a crosswalk there. Another one. Anyway, that's what we're doing. That's been the process. A lot of discussion about that intersection. That's been the hot topic and the hard one.
The hardest,
Right.
yeah. Thank you.
Was there any discussion about major reconstruction of the intersection, or are you just talking?
I don't think so, Jerry. I think it just, whatever we think we can get the county talked into, that would be, reasonable and would accomplish, what we're hoping. In other words, slow people down around that corner. Number one, so people that are crossing specifically North Willamette or Harrison, I guess. Society, oh no, it's Van Dyne, excuse me, the East Van Dyne, where it makes that turn, but those two crosswalks are the ones that people are using that feel uncomfortable. And rightly so. And then again, slow people down. Because if you've been there, watched it, you know that they like to come around that corner as fast as they can. Some discussion about trucking. Only in that there isn't a lot we can do there, maybe truck length. I threw that one out as far as whether or not we can pull down the length of the truck, which would be better, because right now that intersection, they have to really pull out the longer beyond the 40-foot flat. If they're a semi and a pup, they've really got to pull out around that corner. And so that makes it difficult for everybody. But some of the ideas, like I said, were better demarcations, looking at the placement of the stop signs, and the one suggestion that I threw out was maybe a stop sign on Willamette Street as you head north, put a stop sign there. Just to slow people coming around that corner. That's all.
I remember that years ago now, that even a roundabout was considered at one point.
Yeah,
Do that.
that would have been pretty costly. I'm not sure that,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I'm sitting on several other committees, transportation wise, and nobody has any money. And the state's not giving us any money, so, or giving these ODOT or the county or anybody money. So trying to come up with funds for a roundabout would be very tough. So what other reasonable alternatives can we come up with that doesn't cost a lot of money, is what we're after.
Thank you. Any other items or concerns before we adjourn?
I have a quick question.
You bet.
And this is totally off topic, but I guess it's more curiosity than anything. And I'll just use the school as the example, as the situation. So the school sign that's out there is pretty old and run down. And I think Megan, maybe somebody asked you about it. So it's old and run down, but the current dimensions, to my understanding, don't meet our code, correct? So the idea that the school had was, hey, can we update the sign? Can we keep the dimensions the same? But can we fix it? Let's make it look better. Since it doesn't meet the code or the current provisions or code that we have for signs, and I believe it's in county as well. It's not, so it is city. Is there a provision or something where since it's already there and they're not changing any kind of dimensions, is there a policy or procedure or any kind of process that they can go through that would say grandfather kind of a deal? Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the school is located in a residential district. The sign ordinance regulates sign size and type and design based on which district you're located in. So the school falls under an exempt category within the residential district for institutional signs. The sign that is existing now is considered a legal non-conforming sign, which means that it is grandfathered in to stay the way that it is as it is. But once it is replaced or fixed, it needs to come into compliance with the new sign requirements.
Or
That
fix?
being said,
Okay.
I believe there could be a pathway if the school wanted to try to seek a variance to demonstrate why the traditional residential standards were not being should not be applied in this case because the school has a different hardship. And so the example I was thinking when I was thinking this in my head is if the school were not located where it was, if the school were located in a residential neighborhood, or you had another type of public institution in a residential neighborhood,
Yeah.
the design standards are meant to keep those signs more low
Sure.
and wide.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Makes sense. In the case of the school and the applicant who I spoke with expressed that it was important for them that folks that are in their cars in the pickup line are able to see the sign, which was part of the reason to have it above the 6-foot height limit. So that would be part of perhaps the argument that the applicant would craft in seeking a variance. And I'm happy to speak with you or them further about that.
Do you remember who the applicant was? I'm
Um,
hearing murmurings. I haven't talked to anybody about it other than just like, oh yeah, I've got kids there and they're kind of talking about it. Seems like John has a.
The factor would be safety for kids.
So
So you are, just to clarify before I forget,
Yeah.
you are correct that that is a Lane County road that runs by the school.
right.
So the sign has to meet Lane County vision clearance requirements. But I verified that the proposed sign was okayed by the traffic team at Lane County. It is the local standards and Coburg sign ordinance A-155 that is not being met.
So is there a process for exception to that? It'd be the variance, correct? Okay. Yeah, I heard about that and I just thought, gosh, it's already there. They're just trying to paint it or beautify it or fix the post before it erodes. seems silly that, you're right, or being replaced it or something. So, yeah, I just wanted to ask about that. So just to clarify what you said, being replaced or fixed, it has to come to code. Okay. So they couldn't like fix a post here, fix a post there.
I would need some more details on what that looked like.
Yeah,
But generally speaking, the improvements mean that it need to come into compliance.
gotcha. Okay, so variance would
But,
be the route.
but further details, we could
Yeah.
discuss further.
Perfect, cool. Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you.
Anything else? Meeting adjourned.
6:54.
Sorry to spend your last 4 minutes on that, guys. My
No, it's
fault.
sort of interesting.